At 5:15 the morning, the alarm rings inside a small apartment. The sound echoes through the quiet room where a young man is still lying in bed. Exhausted from working overtime and barely catching the last train the previous night, he struggles to wake up. Half asleep, he reaches for his phone and slowly begins to realize that morning has already arrived while his body still longs for more rest. Maekawa Akihiro, a 3-5. Maekawa Akihiro, systems engineer, wakes up early in the morning feeling exhausted. After checking his phone, he notices an alert about a system failure but sees that he has not been called in. With some relief, he prepares to start his day. Outside, the streets are already lively with lights and activity, and the cold winter air fills the room. As the year nears its end, he quietly prepares himself for another routine and monotonous workday. Akihiro follows the same routine every day, working, returning home on the last train, eating alone, and going to sleep. His life has become a quiet cycle of waking up, going to work, and repeating the same duties without change. As he reflects on the past few years, he realizes little has changed, except that he talks to himself more and feels older. With no major events in his life, he believes this uneventful routine will likely continue for many more years. As Akihiro leaves his apartment for work, something suddenly catches his attention. Surprised, he stops at the doorway, sensing that something unusual has appeared right outside his home. Akihiro suddenly finds himself in a strange white space. Shocked and confused, he looks around and realizes the door behind him has disappeared. Panic begins to set in as he struggles to understand what is happening. As he desperately demands an explanation and tries to grasp the situation, mysterious notifications appear before him. A skill called Sage is granted to help with situational awareness, followed by another ability called Perception after he requests information about his current condition. As Akihiro struggles to understand the situation, more system messages appear, granting him a new skill called Acquisition, allowing him to obtain information and experience. A mysterious presence identifies itself as an interface responsible for sending people from one place to another. Confused and overwhelmed, Akihiro insists that he was simply on his way to work and demands to be returned to where he came from. After demanding to return home, the mysterious interface simply sends him away, wishing him a safe journey. Moments later, Akihiro awakens in a quiet, natural place. The scent of soil fills the air, and the sound of the forest rustling surrounds him. The familiar smell and atmosphere remind him of the mountains he once visited with his grandfather as a child, bringing back a wave of nostalgia. Memories from Akihiro's childhood begin to surface. He recalls going into the mountains with his grandfather, who taught him how to survive in the wild. Together they hunted animals, prepared food, and bathed in the river. Young Akihiro admired his grandfather's skills and eagerly listened as the old man promised to teach him everything one day. The warm memories fill him with nostalgia as he reflects on those peaceful moments from his past. Akihiro slowly wakes up, lying on the grass. His body aches, and he realizes he is no longer in his room. Remembering that it is a weekday and that he has a meeting at work, he suddenly panics and jumps to his feet. However, as he looks around, he finds himself surrounded by trees and nature. Confused and disoriented, he begins to question where he has ended up. Realizing he is already late for work, Akihiro initially worries about his perfect attendance record, but quickly understands that it is the least of his concerns now. Looking around, he sees nothing but trees stretching in every direction. Confused about why he is in such a place, he begins searching the area, hoping to find houses or shops nearby. From a rocky spot, he observes the surroundings and decides to move forward to figure out where he is. Reaching a high point, Akihiro looks out over a vast wilderness stretching far into the distance. There are no buildings, roads, or signs of civilization anywhere in sight. Realizing he is likely no longer in Japan, he begins thinking logically about survival. With no nearby habitation, he understands he must quickly secure food and water while staying cautious, since the forest may hide dangerous creatures. Calming himself, he decides to carefully assess the situation before taking his next step. Akihiro checks his bag and finds a lighter, a charger, and a small portable tool set. Using what he has, he decides to create simple tools that could also serve as weapons if needed. Although he feels completely unprepared for survival, he forces himself to act and fashions a crude spear from a branch. Even a simple tool is better than having nothing, as he cautiously listens to the forest around him. While moving through the grass, Akihiro suddenly notices a snake nearby. It resembles a green snake he once knew, but something about it feels different. When the snake spits venom, he quickly reacts and uses a pick from his toolset to strike back, realizing the creature is dangerous and must be dealt with carefully. After narrowly avoiding the snake's attack, Akihiro manages to defeat it. As he examines the creature, a strange glowing presence appears before him. The entity introduces itself as Sage, a guide granted to him in this world. It explains that its role is to assist him. Moments later, another message appears, informing him that the skill Stealth has been transferred from the defeated creature. Akihiro introduces himself and begins asking questions about the strange abilities he just obtained. The guide explains that he was granted 3 main skills upon entering this world: Sage, Perception, and Acquisition. It also clarifies that the stealth ability he received came from the creature he defeated. In addition to these main skills, he can develop various sub-skills through experience as he continues to survive in this new world. The guide explains that stealth is a skill that allows Akihiro to hide himself by obstructing visual awareness, though most skills only become effective once they reach higher levels through training. Realizing it will take time to master, Akihiro begins to accept the situation. Looking around the unfamiliar landscape, he finally understands that he is not simply far from home. The reality sinks in that he has been transported to an entirely different world, leaving him overwhelmed and close to tears. Akihiro asks Sage whether the snake he defeated is safe to eat. Following the guide's advice, he uses his perception skill to analyze it. The ability confirms that the creature is edible. Relieved, he prepares the meat and notices that it even smells surprisingly good. Encouraged by the result, he realizes that his new skills may be very useful for surviving in this unfamiliar world. After cooking the snake, Akihiro eats it and finds that it tastes similar to eel. Grateful for the meal, he decides to continue exploring the forest while searching for water and a safe place to rest. While moving through the area, he notices a snare trap hidden among the leaves. The discovery tells him that intelligent beings live nearby. Realizing he could encounter them soon, he considers preparing a proper weapon first, hoping that whoever set the trap is friendly. Akihiro gathers stones that are easy to shape and crafts a simple stone axe. While working, he also discovers a nearby river, realizing it could provide a reliable source of water. With the axe finished, he feels a bit safer and decides to make a spear with a sharpened tip next. Just as he prepares to continue, a sudden noise from the forest catches his attention. Hearing a loud cry from the forest, Akihiro heads toward the place where he saw the trap earlier. When he arrives, he discovers a massive wild boar caught there. As he observes the scene, he also notices another person nearby, realizing he is not alone in this strange place. Akihiro looks closer and realizes the person near the trapped boar is a young girl. She holds an axe tightly, clearly preparing to deal with the animal herself. As he watches from a distance, he is surprised by her appearance and determination. Seeing her ready to act, he becomes both curious and slightly nervous about what she will do next. The girl stands before the trapped boar, gripping her weapon and preparing to strike. Watching from nearby, Akihiro realizes her small axe will not be enough to take down such a massive animal. As the boar suddenly lunges toward her, he quickly throws his own axe toward the creature, trying to help before it attacks her. The trapped boar suddenly charges toward the girl, forcing her to jump back in shock. Just as the attack is about to reach her, Akihiro's thrown axe strikes the boar. The hit stops the beast's charge, causing it to collapse to the ground. Surprised, the girl looks at the fallen animal, realizing someone nearby intervened at the critical moment. Akihiro rushes forward and positions himself between the girl and the boar. Gripping his weapon, he warns her to stay back as he prepares to face the beast himself. The girl, still on the ground and surprised by his sudden appearance, watches as he steps in to protect her from the danger. Facing the massive boar, Akihiro realizes there is no turning back now. Even a normal boar would be dangerous, and this monster-sized one seems far more threatening. Still, he has already stepped forward. Observing carefully, he notices the front leg he struck with the axe is injured. The wound makes it difficult for the beast to support its weight, slowing its movements. Recognizing this small advantage, Akihiro steadies himself, knowing that if the boar's tusks hit him, the fight will be over. Taking advantage of the boar's injured leg, Akihiro rushes forward as the beast stumbles. Seizing the opening, he drives his spear down with all his strength, striking the animal directly. The impact lands solidly, and the boar collapses. Exhausted but relieved, Akihiro realizes he has successfully brought down the massive creature. The boar finally collapses after the decisive strike. Breathing heavily, Akihiro steps back, relieved that he managed to survive the fight. As the creature lies motionless, another system message appears before him, informing him that the boar's skill, bravery, has been transferred to him. After the fight, Akihiro catches his breath, realizing how close he came to dying. He understands that if he had not prepared a weapon earlier, he would not have survived the encounter. Determined to live in this new world, he decides he must improve his fighting skills. Only then does he remember the girl he helped. Turning toward her, he checks if she is hurt, hoping she can understand him as he speaks to her. Wanting to show he means no harm, Akihiro slowly places his weapon on the ground and raises his hands. Kneeling in front of the girl, he takes a completely defenseless posture to prove that he is not an enemy. The girl watches him carefully, surprised by his sudden gesture. As Akihiro kneels with his hands raised, a message appears, indicating that his language recognition is being synchronized. To his surprise, he suddenly understands the girl. She confirms that she is not hurt and thanks him for saving her. Relieved to hear that she is safe, Akihiro feels reassured as the two are finally able to communicate. When the girl sees Akihiro kneeling with his hands raised and his weapon dropped, she blushes and becomes flustered. In her culture, such a gesture is considered the highest form of respect and is often associated with a marriage proposal. Believing that he has proposed to her, she shyly says she accepts, leaving Akihiro completely confused about how the situation turned into such a misunderstanding. The girl explains that in her culture, kneeling with both hands raised and dropping all weapons represents the highest form of respect between a man and a woman, symbolizing a marriage proposal. Misunderstanding Akihiro's gesture, she shyly accepts what she believes is his proposal. Akihiro is left completely stunned, realizing that his attempt to show peace has turned into an unexpected engagement in this unfamiliar world. Still kneeling, Akihiro realizes that his gesture has unintentionally been taken as a marriage proposal. The girl gently asks him to take care of her, and affectionately calls him her darling. Confused and overwhelmed by the sudden situation, Akihiro can only wonder what he should do next. Unaware of the customs of this world, 5-year-old Akihiro Maekawa accidentally ends up proposing after saving the girl. Realizing the misunderstanding, he feels that his fate may already be sealed. The girl happily welcomes him and invites him to her village. With no better option, Akihiro decides to go along for now, thinking it may be best to clear up the misunderstanding later while heading toward a place where other people live. The girl cheerfully introduces herself as Lizia, a 5-year-old apprentice hunter. Hearing her age, Akihiro is instantly shocked. Realizing he unintentionally proposed to someone 20 years younger than him and still a minor, he panics, horrified by the misunderstanding. Lizia explains that, in her world, someone who is 15 is already considered an adult and can live independently, even marry. Hearing this, Akihiro feels relieved that the situation is not as problematic as he first thought. Embarrassed by the misunderstanding, he quickly apologizes and awkwardly introduces himself, stating that his name is Akihiro Maekawa. When Akihiro explains that Maekawa is his surname and Akihiro his given name, Lizia becomes surprised. In this world, having a surname is usually reserved for nobles. Realizing this, Akihiro quickly clarifies that it is simply normal where he comes from and asks her to just call him Akihiro. Lizia happily agrees, addressing him respectfully as Akihiro-sama, which leaves him slightly flustered. When Akihiro asks her to drop the honorifics and simply call him by name, Lizia becomes flustered. In her culture, doing so implies a very close relationship, something she feels shy about accepting immediately. Embarrassed, she asks for a little more time before speaking so casually with him. Meanwhile, Akihiro realizes that his attempts to fix the misunderstanding are only creating even more awkward situations between them. Akihiro wonders how they will move the massive boar, estimating it weighs around 300 kilograms. Lizia calmly suggests that they first break down the catch. To his surprise, she easily lifts the heavy animal using a rope and a tree branch, showing far more strength than he expected. Curious, Akihiro activates his recognition skill and sees her abilities. Lizia possesses high strength, along with several hunting skills, including small game hunting, medium game hunting, bird hunting, and archery. Curious about Lizia's strength, Akihiro asks Sage about super strength. The explanation reveals that magical power in this world comes from transforming magical energy in the environment into usable force, and super strength works by amplifying the muscles with that magic. Realizing this world truly runs on swords and sorcery, Akihiro reflects on how different it is from the scientific world he came from. Meanwhile, Lizia finishes draining the boar's blood and prepares to start cutting it apart, suggesting they cool the meat in a nearby pond before nightfall. Lizia notices that Akihiro knows quite a lot about processing animals and asks if it came from his family's profession. He explains that it is something he learned from watching his grandfather, who used to hunt. After finishing their preparations, Lizia says the village is about 5 kilometers away and suggests they head there. Relieved to hear that a settlement is nearby, Akihiro agrees as they begin their journey together. While walking toward the village, Lizia asks if it is truly all right for her to become his wife. Akihiro awkwardly explains that he is actually 35 years old and worries that he must seem much older to her, especially since they are strangers. Lizia, however, responds casually. She says he looks like he is in his mid-20s and believes relationships can start between strangers anyway. To her, age is not the most important thing, leaving Akihiro even more surprised by her perspective. Noticing his hesitation, Lizia asks if he is upset. Blushing, she admits she is only comfortable with the idea because it is him, and that she would not accept just anyone. With a bright smile, she suggests they simply try to stay together and see how things go. She also casually mentions that there are ways to reverse aging in this world, leaving Akihiro stunned by the idea. Curious about her comment on reversing age, Akihiro asks Sage for clarification. The guide explains that rejuvenation can be achieved through special medicines, magical devices, or even divine miracles. Hearing this, Akihiro becomes shocked and starts wondering if gods truly exist in this world. Lizia casually reminds him that this is a world filled with magic, deities, and incredible things, and tells him to stop overthinking it as they continue toward the village. After walking for some time, Lizia and Akihiro finally reach their destination. From the hill, a peaceful settlement spreads out below them. Lizia welcomes him to Taruka village. Seeing the houses and size of the settlement, Akihiro is surprised that the village is much larger than he expected. As evening approaches, Lizia invites Akihiro to stay at her home for the night. Embarrassed, he apologizes and explains that he has no money to pay for lodging, but she insists, reminding him that he saved her life. When they arrive at her house, Lizia calls out to her father. He greets her at the door and asks how the trap situation went, noticing the unfamiliar guest standing behind her. Lizia introduces Akihiro to her father, explaining that he is the one who saved her during the incident with the boar. However, she also casually adds that Akihiro is the man who proposed to her. Hearing this, her father and Akihiro lock eyes in sudden tension as the unexpected statement hangs in the air. Akihiro quickly apologizes for the confusion and introduces himself politely. The situation feels extremely awkward, especially after Lizia's sudden announcement. Her father, who introduces himself as Ast, calmly says he would like Akihiro to come inside so they can properly talk about what happened. As Akihiro follows him, he nervously wonders if he is about to face serious trouble. Inside the house, Akihiro is offered a cup of herbal tea while everyone sits down to talk. He compliments the pleasant taste as he relaxes slightly. Lizia's mother, Tizna, warmly introduces herself. Meanwhile, Ast asks Lizia to explain what happened, admitting that he is still confused about the whole situation. Lizia excitedly explains what happened in the forest. She describes how a massive boar was caught in the trap and how she was nearly thrown aside by it. Just when things looked hopeless, Akihiro suddenly appeared and defeated the monster with a powerful strike. She continues the story dramatically, saying that after bringing down the beast, Akihiro threw aside his weapon, knelt before her, looked into her eyes with determination, and proposed. As she blushes while telling the story, Akihiro realizes her version of events is far more romantic than what actually happened. After hearing Lizia's story, her father calmly explains that everything seems to be moving far too quickly. He clarifies that it is not that he dislikes Akihiro, but he believes it may be premature to start talking about marriage just because he saved her. Akihiro quickly agrees with him, relieved that someone else sees the situation the same way. Still, after observing him for a moment, Lizia's father admits that Akihiro appears to be a respectable and capable person. Trying to explain the situation, Lizia's father imagines that Akihiro must be a noble who fell in love with Lizia and proposed in a moment of passion while struggling with family expectations about marriage. Embarrassed by the exaggerated story, Akihiro quickly denies it and clarifies that he is neither a noble nor someone of high status. He explains that in his world he worked as an accountant at a trading company, realizing that his real background would likely make little sense to people in this world. Akihiro explains that earlier that morning, he was simply on his way to work when he was suddenly surrounded by light and transported to the enchanted forest. Ast listens carefully while examining Akihiro's clothing, noting how finely made the fabric is. Lizia is also amazed, saying the material is incredibly delicate and unlike anything she has ever seen, while Akihiro admits he has no idea how such fabric is even produced in this world. Lizia's mother apologizes for examining Akihiro's clothing so closely and explains that she is a weaver, which is why she was curious about the unusual fabric. Meanwhile, Ast observes the situation carefully and concludes that Akihiro's clothes must have come from a very prestigious merchant. Realizing that he still appears suspicious, Akihiro decides it may be better not to explain everything for now. Since he has nowhere else to go, he politely asks if he could stay at their home for the night. Ast agrees to let Akihiro stay, explaining that his son is currently away working in another village, so his room is available. Though he calls it a humble home, he warmly invites Akihiro to remain as long as he needs. Lizia shows Akihiro to her brother's room. As he sits down, she tells him she will bring warm water later so he can clean up, which he gratefully accepts after the exhausting and sweaty day. Lizia tells Akihiro she will call him when dinner is ready and apologizes for not being able to prepare anything fancy. Grateful for her kindness, he thanks her sincerely before she leaves the room. Left alone, Akihiro relaxes on the bed and reflects on the strange day. Looking at his hands, he notices the marks from earlier have disappeared, and the thought of the accidental marriage proposal crosses his mind again. That night, Akihiro looks out at the quiet sky and reflects on everything that happened. He had always believed stories about being suddenly transported to another world were nothing more than fiction. Yet now, he finds himself living through exactly that kind of story. Nearby, Lizia hums cheerfully, while Akihiro silently contemplates the strange new life that has begun for him. The next morning, Lizia prepares breakfast while Akihiro sits at the table wearing borrowed clothes. She asks if he wants to work. Wanting to support himself, Akihiro explains that he cannot keep staying there for free and needs to earn money somehow. He asks if there is any job he could do in the village. That morning, Ast suggests that Akihiro should register at the Adventurers Guild if he wants to start working. During the conversation, Ast explains that Lizia had gone hunting alone the previous day because his back had been acting up. Lizia confirms that she is still an apprentice and continues learning hunting skills from her father. With that settled, Akihiro brings up the idea of joining the Adventurers Guild as the next step to finding work in this new world. Ast explains that the Adventurers Guild is a place that organizes different kinds of work and tells Akihiro he should register there first. Lizia offers to guide him around the village afterward. As they leave, Ast jokingly says the two already look like newlyweds, embarrassing Akihiro, while Lizia happily walks ahead to show him the way. Akihiro prepares to leave for the Adventurers Guild, wearing clothes borrowed from Lizia's brother. The outfit fits him well, though the pants are slightly long. Lizia explains that wearing anything too fancy in the village would draw unnecessary attention. Grateful for their kindness despite having no money, Akihiro decides he must find work as soon as possible. After thanking them, he sets out toward the guild, determined to start earning a living in this new world. Akihiro arrives at the Adventurers Guild branch in Toruka village. As he looks at the building and its sign, he notices that the writing resembles Japanese. At that moment, the mysterious sage ability activates, helping him understand the language of this world. After entering the guild, he is greeted by a receptionist who welcomes him and asks if he has come to register as an adventurer. Inside the guild, the receptionist explains the adventurer system to Akihiro. Adventurers are ranked based on their contributions, starting from rank 10 at the lowest and rising to rank 1 at the highest. The rank determines what kinds of jobs an adventurer can take and how much they are paid. She also explains that adventurers normally accept only one job at a time, and completing missions builds credibility and allows their rank to increase. However, the rank represents trust rather than pure strength. To complete the registration, she asks Akihiro to prick his finger with a needle, explaining that only a small amount of blood is required. Akihiro pricks his finger and places his blood on the registration card. The blood is absorbed into the card, magically linking it to his soul. The The receptionist explains that the card will serve as his official Adventurers Guild identification. Because it is bound to his soul, the guild can detect if the owner dies, allowing them to transmit a death report to the card reader. With this process complete, Akihiro's registration as an adventurer is finalized. Since he is new, Akihiro asks the guild receptionist to recommend a suitable job. She suggests a simple request, sending him to gather a plant called weas grass. Following the instructions, Akihiro heads out into a nearby field. Using his knowledge and careful observation, he searches through the tall grass until he successfully identifies the correct plant and prepares to collect it. Akihiro takes a guild request to gather 5 stalks of weas grass, a job requested urgently by the Alchemist Guild. The reward is higher than usual, but the receptionist warns that the nearby forest contains monster nests. Although the threat level is considered low, proper equipment is still recommended. The monsters commonly found in the area include horned rabbits and goblins. Even though such creatures might seem weak in games, Akihiro understands that facing them in reality would still be dangerous. To prepare himself, he borrows a simple tool that could serve as a weapon before heading out to complete the request. Using his recognition skill, Akihiro begins searching the field for weas grass. Confident that he will not mistake the plant, he decides to gather far more than required, aiming for 100 stalks so the task will be finished quickly. As he collects the grass, his thoughts drift back to his former life. Only a few days earlier, he had been sitting at his desk working on a computer. He wonders how his company is doing without him, though he convinces himself that the business will continue running just fine even in his absence. While gathering weas grass, Akihiro reflects on his past life. He remembers how he had been constantly busy with work, neglecting everything else around him. Because of that, his marriage slowly fell apart and eventually ended in divorce 2 years earlier. Believing it was his own fault, he buried himself even deeper in work afterward, using it as a way to escape the loneliness. As Akihiro gathers weas grass, he recalls Lizatia's confession and realizes that her words affected him more than he expected. Even though the proposal began as a misunderstanding, being accepted had still shocked him. He quickly pushes those thoughts aside, deciding that romance and marriage are issues to deal with later. Refocusing on the task, he continues collecting the plants until he successfully gathers 100 stalks of weas grass. After collecting the grass, Akihiro sits down to rest. His back aches from bending over for so long while gathering the plants, so he decides to take a short break before returning to the guild. While resting in the tall grass, he suddenly senses movement nearby. Realizing that something is approaching, he becomes alert to the presence of an animal in the area. While resting in the grass, Akihiro suddenly realizes that the presence nearby is a goblin. The creature wanders through the tall grass holding a crude weapon, seemingly searching for something. Hiding quietly, Akihiro watches the goblin and wonders if it has noticed him. Realizing that it might discover him soon, he decides to move first. Carefully circling behind the monster, he prepares to close the distance and strike before the goblin can react. Akihiro quietly closes the distance behind the goblin and launches a surprise attack. Swinging his makeshift weapon with all his strength, he strikes the monster from behind. The goblin staggers from the sudden blow, but Akihiro does not hesitate. Acting on instinct, he immediately follows up with another powerful strike, determined to finish the fight before the creature can recover. After defeating the goblin, Akihiro witnesses a strange phenomenon. A glowing light rises from the monster and transfers part of its abilities to him, granting him the goblin's spear technique and a small amount of alertness. Remembering the guild's instructions, he recalls that proof of subjugation for goblins is their nose. Although the task is unpleasant, he reluctantly prepares to cut it off so he can bring it back to the guild as evidence. Akihiro returns to the Adventurers Guild and submits the weas grass along with proof of defeating a goblin. The staff begin the appraisal while he waits inside the quiet guild hall. After finishing the evaluation, the receptionist informs him of the reward. He receives payment for the goblin and for 20 bundles of weas grass, bringing the total reward to 18,000 war. The guild staff explains that the weas grass will be used to make healing salves, which are essential because many people cannot afford to get injured without them. Since their supply had been running low, Akihiro's delivery was a great help. After receiving his payment, Akihiro leaves the guild feeling satisfied. Being thanked directly for his work gives him a strong sense of accomplishment, something he had rarely felt before. When Akihiro returns to the house, Lizatia happily welcomes him back. Surprised that they are already home, he greets them as well. Ast explains that Lizia and he each managed to catch something that day. Meanwhile, Lizachia's mother is preparing dinner using the catch, even though she normally dislikes cooking. During dinner, Ast asks Akihiro how his first day at the guild went. Akihiro explains that he gathered 20 bundles of weas grass and defeated a goblin, earning a total of 18,000 war. Ast is impressed, noting that most people only manage 2 or 3 bundles a day. Akihiro explains that his success is thanks to his recognition skill. Since his income is still unstable, Akihiro politely asks if he can continue staying with them until he reaches rank 9, and Ast agrees without hesitation. Ast tells Akihiro that he can stay for the time being and use his brother's room, since his brother will not return for another month. He explains that his brother had been helping cover work because a hunter from a nearby village was injured. Relieved by the offer, Akihiro accepts their hospitality. Soon after, Lizia calls everyone to the table as dinner is finally ready. During dinner, Akihiro enjoys the meal and praises the food, especially the soft meatballs and the excellent seasoning. Lizia happily accepts the compliment, feeling pleased that he likes her cooking. Her mother teases that Lizia has been especially motivated since Akihiro arrived, which embarrasses her. Despite the teasing, the warm and cheerful atmosphere continues as they share the meal together. During dinner, the conversation shifts to strange rumors about huge footprints found in the forest. Some believe they belong to a goblin, while others joke that it might even be a Bigfoot-like creature. As Akihiro listens to the lively discussion, he reflects on how long it has been since he last said the words, "I'm home," and had someone welcome him back. Though he still does not know what lies ahead in this unfamiliar world, the warmth of the moment comforts him. For now, he decides to focus on moving forward and aims to reach Adventurer rank 9 starting the next day. The next day, Akihiro begins training outside the house. Using a wooden weapon, he practices his swings repeatedly, trying to improve his strength and fighting ability. However, he quickly becomes exhausted. Realizing how much stamina he has lost over the years, he reflects that despite practicing kendo intensely during college, his body has grown weak from neglect and long hours spent working at a desk. Seeing Akihiro exhausted from training, Ast warns him that stamina is crucial in real fights, since long battles can become dangerous without enough endurance. Concerned for his safety, Ast suggests that, besides training, he should also pray for divine protection so he does not get injured. Curious, Akihiro asks about it, and learns that people in this world pray at the church to receive blessings from the gods. Finding the idea interesting, he considers visiting the church, and Lizia notices his interest and asks if he plans to go there. Following Ast's advice, Akihiro decides to visit the church. After asking around in the village, he eventually arrives in front of a large stone building. Looking up at it, he realizes that this must be the village church, the place where people pray to the gods for protection and blessings. Akihiro enters the village church and is greeted warmly by a nun. He explains that it is his first time praying and asks her to teach him the proper way to worship. The nun kindly agrees and guides him inside, explaining that the church is a place where people give thanks to a real God. She also mentions that children often come there to learn reading and arithmetic, showing that the church also serves as a place of education in the village. Inside the church, the nun tells Akihiro to take his time praying while she waits in another room. Following her instructions, he kneels in front of the altar. He raises both hands, closes his eyes, and begins to pray. As he does so, he notices that the posture resembles the position he once used when proposing, making him wonder if that gesture may have originally come from a similar act of prayer. While praying inside the church, Akihiro suddenly hears strange messages from his sage ability. A warning appears, saying that a critical error has occurred and that an unknown system has been disconnected. Confused by the unexpected notification, he tries to understand what is happening. At that moment, a mysterious voice reacts with amusement, repeatedly calling the situation interesting while laughing, fascinated by what it has just discovered. As Akihiro continues praying, the strange disturbance from his sage ability suddenly leads to an unexpected encounter. A mysterious figure appears before him, dressed elegantly with a playful and theatrical presence. The man greets Akihiro warmly, welcoming him to the world and introducing himself as Shell, a being who claims to govern pleasure. Fascinated by the situation, he shows clear interest in Akihiro's arrival and existence in this world. The mysterious man confirms that he is indeed a god, explaining that all living beings in this world refer to beings like him as gods. Surprised, Akihiro asks about the meaning of being called a visitor. The god then asks Akihiro to introduce himself first. Nervously, Akihiro gives his name as Akihiro Maekawa. After hearing it, the god decides to simply call him Akihiro, remarking that it is a fitting name for what lies ahead. Shell explains that Akihiro is considered a visitor, meaning he is the first guest to arrive in this world from outside of it. According to him, there are countless worlds in existence, each operating independently and ruled by its own gods. Overwhelmed by the explanation, Akihiro struggles to keep up with the idea of multiple worlds and divine rulers, gradually losing track of what Shelly is saying. Seeing that Akihiro is confused, Shell decides to explain things using terms he understands. He says that the universe can be imagined like a network made of many independent servers. Each world functions like its own server, while the people living in those worlds are like terminals connected to them. The gods, on the other hand, act like administrators who control and manage the applications running on each world. Shell continues explaining that Akihiro somehow crossed the closed network between worlds and connected to the system managed by the gods. Amused by the unusual situation, he finds the phenomenon very interesting. Thinking from a technical perspective, Akihiro wonders if such an event should have left some kind of record or log in the system. When he asks about it, Shell reveals something surprising. Those records appear to have been tampered with, suggesting that someone interfered with the system. Akihiro wonders if there is an existence that oversees even the gods, like an administrator. Shell confirms this idea, explaining that the administrator is a higher concept above the gods and responsible for building the structures of each world. Realizing this, Akihiro asks an important question. If such an administrator exists, why did it connect him to this world in the first place? Shell explains that they already contacted the higher system about the tampered records, but received no response yet, joking that the support service is terrible. He then clarifies Akihiro's abilities. The Sage skill works like a voice chat support system that provides information, while recognition functions like a browser and screen reader. Another ability, Acquisition, is an administrative authority that allows him to obtain skills. Shell notes that these types of skills do not normally exist among the inhabitants of this world. Shell explains that the administrator's intentions remain unknown, but the gods still welcome Akihiro to this world. Akihiro worries that, as a terminal, possessing abilities similar to illegal software might be a problem, yet Shell reassures him that he is already aware of it. When Akihiro asks if returning to his original world is possible, Shell says that once they manage to contact the administrator, the gods will negotiate on his behalf if he wishes to go back. Until then, the gods will watch over him as a new resident of the world. However, Shell warns that living there without any fundamental skills would be difficult, so they intend to grant Akihiro several gifts to help him survive. Shell tells Akihiro that he looks forward to their next meeting and blesses him with good fortune as a new resident of the world. As he speaks, he reaches out and touches Akihiro's head, completing the process of granting the promised gifts. Moments later, Shell disappears, leaving Akihiro alone inside the church. Shortly after, the system connected to Akihiro activates again. The Sage interface reports that the connection has been confirmed, normal operation has resumed, and the previous critical error has been resolved. After Shell disappears, Akihiro is left alone trying to process everything that just happened. The amount of information overwhelms him, so he decides he needs to organize his thoughts. The system then displays several new notifications. It confirms that the conditions for skill acquisition have been fulfilled, and that new abilities have been integrated: prayer, formula control, attribute control, and control window. Realizing these must be the gifts granted by the gods, Akihiro begins to think about what they mean. The description of prayer suggests it is a skill that allows someone to petition the gods and receive divine revelations. Curious about this ability, he sits outside and decides to test it, asking the Sage system what exactly the prayer skill does. Akihiro sits outside the church, still overwhelmed by everything that happened. The system messages reveal that several new abilities have been integrated, including prayer, formula control, attribute control, and control window. Realizing these must be the gifts given to him, he begins trying to understand them. He learns that the prayer skill allows someone to petition the gods and receive divine revelations. Curious about whether it truly works, Akihiro decides to test the ability. To his surprise, the connection immediately succeeds. A god responds to his call, which shocks him because he had only intended to experiment with the skill. Embarrassed, he quickly apologizes for contacting the god so casually. The god, however, reacts in a relaxed and easygoing manner, introducing herself as Valda, the one who governs abundance. She explains that if Akihiro ever needs anything, he can simply call again. Although the brief interaction leaves Akihiro a little startled, he realizes that the prayer skill truly allows him to directly communicate with the gods. Akihiro continues reviewing the new abilities he received and asks the Sage system to explain formula control. The system informs him that this skill converts mana particles into magical power, and then transforms that magical power into structured formulas used to cast magic. Hearing this, Akihiro becomes excited because it means he can finally use magic in this world. He then asks about attribute control. The system explains that the magical power created through formula control becomes a fundamental magical substance, the base element of magic. For Akihiro specifically, the wind attribute has been added, allowing him to use wind-based magic. Although this means he can currently use wind magic, the system clarifies that attribute control skills are relatively easy to learn later. With enough study and training, Akihiro could eventually gain access to other elements as well. Akihiro reflects on everything he has learned. Although returning to his original world is not immediately possible, knowing it might happen someday eases his mind. Since he is now in another world, he decides to focus on learning magic. Determined to move forward, he plans to return home and ask around about where he can study it. However, he quickly realizes that before anything else, he needs to train his body, which has become weak after years of office work. During a meal, Akihiro asks if there is somewhere he can study magic. The others mention a mage who handles magical tools at the general store. They explain that behind the shop there is a magic tool store run by that mage who might be willing to teach him. Hearing this, Akihiro decides to visit the place later that day. Akihiro heads to the general store to look for the mage who might teach him magic. Lizia insists on accompanying him and tells him to do his best training with Ast. After arriving at the shop, Akihiro enters and asks about the mage, explaining that he wants to study magic. The shopkeeper welcomes him and listens to his request. The shopkeeper directs Akihiro to a room in the back where the mage works. Inside, the mage greets him and asks what he needs. Akihiro explains that he heard he could learn magic there. The mage becomes interested, recognizing him as a potential new student. After observing him, the mage notices that Akihiro already seems to have awakened spell formula control and asks where he learned such an ability. Akihiro explains that he never formally studied magic and that his ability to control spell formulas awakened on its own after receiving a blessing from a god who governs magic formulas. The mage finds this interesting and tells him that mastering the skill simply requires repeated practice. When asked about his attribute, Akihiro believes it is wind. The mage then introduces himself as Bastia, and Akihiro gives his own name in return. Bastia proceeds to ask Akihiro more about his magical attribute so he can better understand his abilities. Bastia explains that wind magic is not his specialty, but he demonstrates it so Akihiro can observe. He carefully constructs the spell by defining the wind attribute, pressure, and shape, forming a small sphere of compressed wind above his hand and launching it forward. Akihiro watches in amazement as the air gathers and spins like a swirling ball of wind. Bastia releases the wind spell, sending the compressed sphere forward and striking the target with force. Akihiro watches in amazement, impressed by the power of the technique. Bastia then explains the basics of a spell formula. First, the mage decides which attribute to use. Next, they imagine how that attribute will be applied. After that, they visualize the shape the magic will take, and finally determine where the spell will appear before executing it. Bastia continues explaining that once the mage clearly imagines the attribute, its application, shape, and position without contradictions, the spell activates the moment the command is given. He adds that the final step is to imagine how the magic will move. He also notes that chanting is not strictly necessary. Speaking the spell simply helps stabilize the image in the caster's mind. After finishing the explanation, Bastia tells Akihiro to picture the magic striking the target and invites him to try casting a spell himself. Akihiro eagerly agrees. Following Bastia's instructions, Akihiro carefully visualizes the spell. He sets the wind attribute, defines the pressure, and imagines a small cone-shaped form. He fixes the position slightly in front of his finger and stabilizes the image in his mind. Once everything is clear, he directs the magic forward at high speed and executes the spell. Akihiro releases the spell, and the wind projectile shoots forward, striking the target with unexpected force. Bastia is shocked by the result and quickly tries to stop him. Immediately after casting, Akihiro becomes dizzy and nauseous. Bastia rushes over to check on him, realizing it was Akihiro's first attempt. He is surprised by the power of the spell, since wind magic is usually used to push or strike opponents, not to create such a precise and powerful attack. Bastia realizes that Akihiro compressed the wind far too much when defining the pressure. Because he is not used to handling mana yet, the excess energy rebounds and causes dizziness. Akihiro asks if he can keep firing the spell repeatedly, but Bastia advises against it for now. Even so, he admits the result was impressive for a first attempt. He also warns that if the spell had struck someone's head, the compressed wind could have caused serious damage. However, as Akihiro improves his control over magic, the recoil and side effects will gradually decrease. Akihiro asks about multi-formulas. Bastia explains that such techniques exist, but are still too advanced for him, as he is only learning the basics. To demonstrate, Bastia shows an example spell. He sets the earth attribute, defines the unit mass and shape, and arranges multiple stones in a circle above his hand. The stones launch forward at high speed, then automatically convert back into mana after a short time. Watching the spell, Akihiro is amazed as several stones appear and move exactly as Bastia described. Bastia executes the spell, launching multiple stones that strike the target one after another. He explains that multi-formulas allow a mage to create several units of magic at once and control each one independently. In real combat, the projectiles can even be curved to attack enemies from different angles or from behind. Bastia adds that he specializes in earth magic and that many warriors use this technique because it can hit multiple targets simultaneously. Hearing this, Akihiro realizes how complex the technique is and understands that mastering it will take significant practice. Bastia advises Akihiro to continue practicing simple spell formulas and gradually improve his control before attempting more advanced techniques. When Akihiro asks about the lesson fee, Bastia asks about his job and learns that he is only a 10th rank adventurer. Seeing that he is still a beginner, Bastia refuses to charge him for now. He tells Akihiro to come back when he is free, and once Akihiro reaches 8th rank, he will start accepting payment for proper lessons. Grateful for the opportunity, Akihiro thanks him and promises to return. After leaving the shop, Akihiro decides to keep practicing magic, but first he needs money. He heads out to gather Wia's grass again. Using what he learned, he works much more efficiently than before, and quickly collects a large bundle. Later, he returns to the guild and turns in the materials, where the staff thanks him for bringing the Wia's grass and encourages him to come again soon. After leaving the guild, Akihiro notices several adventurers staring at him and begins to feel uneasy. Thinking newcomers tend to stand out, he decides it would be better to leave before any trouble starts. When he returns home, he hands over a small pouch of money as payment for the day's rent. Tija welcomes him back as he offers the payment. Akihiro returns home and greets everyone. He offers payment for the rent, insisting on contributing since they have been taking care of him. They welcome him back and mention that work finished early because the weather looked bad. Lizia asks how his trip went and whether he managed to learn magic. Akihiro says he plans to train outside for a while. As the others talk about the rent he insisted on paying, Lizia becomes curious and asks if she can watch his training. Lizia and the others talk about Akihiro's determination. They agree that someone who works that hard deserves support, even if earning money in an unfamiliar land is not easy. Seeing how sincere he is, they decide not to stop him. Outside, Akihiro begins training, swinging his weapon repeatedly as he practices and works to improve his strength. Lizia quietly watches Akihiro train. When she asks why he is not practicing magic, he explains that using spell control causes mana backlash, so he plans to practice it after finishing his physical training. Although she is surprised, Akihiro reassures her that he will get used to it with time. Lizia still feels a little worried but accepts his explanation. Akihiro practices controlling his wind magic. Wanting to restrain enemies rather than kill them, he aims for the limbs and sets up a wooden log as his target. He carefully defines the spell's position, pressure, and shape before firing the wind projectile forward. The attack strikes the log, showing improvement in accuracy. Although some recoil still remains and the power feels slightly weak, Akihiro sees that he is making progress and decides to keep refining his control. After training for a while, Akihiro becomes exhausted and collapses from severe muscle soreness. Realizing he pushed himself too hard, he regrets not exercising more before coming to this world. Lizia calls him inside as the rain begins to fall. Seeing how worn out he is, she brings him a poultice to help with his muscle fatigue. Grateful for her kindness, Akihiro thanks her while resting and recovering from the intense training. While helping treat Akihiro's sore muscles, Lizia tells him that her father may not say it openly, but he worries about him. Akihiro says he is truly grateful for their kindness. Lizia explains that her father asked her to bring the treatment and check on him. Seeing how hard Akihiro works moves her deeply, and she tells him that his effort makes him a wonderful person. Akihiro admits that he wants to do whatever he can to repay the family's kindness, though he jokingly notes that saying such serious things, while completely worn out, feels a bit embarrassing. As Lizia treats his muscles, Akihiro complains about the itching from the medicine, but he thanks her for helping. Embarrassed, Lizia shyly tells him that she thinks he is really cool, which surprises him. Lying there, Akihiro reflects that he never expected to feel this kind of youthful moment again after so many years. The next day, his body feels much better thanks to the poultice. Determined to keep improving, he heads out to gather more weas grass, planning to go deeper into the forest and, if possible, test his spell control in real combat. While gathering weas grass deeper in the forest, Akihiro spots two goblins eating something. Realizing this is a chance to test his magic in real combat, he quietly prepares himself. Staying hidden, he targets one of the goblins from behind. Carefully defining the wind attribute, pressure, shape, and position, he focuses the spell in front of his finger and launches the attack at high speed, executing the wind strike toward the enemy's back. Akihiro's wind attack pierces the first goblin, leaving it fatally wounded. The second goblin notices something is wrong and begins to react. Remaining calm, Akihiro prepares another spell. He forms a compressed wind projectile at the tip of his finger and aims carefully at the creature's left knee. As he executes the attack, the magic fires forward at high speed. At that moment, a new skill is activated, Alertness, LV, one transferred to him through skill acquisition. Akihiro's wind strike shatters the goblin's knee, stopping its movement. Taking the chance, he rushes forward and finishes the creature with a decisive swing of his weapon. After the fight ends, he checks for another skill acquisition, but receives none this time. The system indicates that no skill transfer occurred because the defeated monster lacked compatible higher-tier abilities. With the danger gone, Akihiro relaxes slightly and confirms the goblin is no longer alive. After defeating the goblins, Akihiro notes that he could have ended the fight faster by aiming for the head, but the guild only requested the goblins' noses as proof. Returning to town, he reflects that he is gradually getting used to using magic and is relieved that he did not suffer any mana backlash this time. At the guild, he hands in the materials and receives his reward for 2 goblins, along with the weas grass he gathered, earning a total of 28,000 weir. Pleased with the result, he considers buying a new pair of shoes with the money. A man approaches Akihiro after hearing rumors about a newcomer gathering large amounts of weas grass. Akihiro nervously assumes he might be in trouble, but the man quickly reassures him. He explains that herb supplies are running low and prices are rising, so adventurers appreciate anyone collecting medicinal plants. As ranks increase and injuries become more common, such herbs can be the difference between life and death. The adventurer praises Akihiro for gathering herbs and calls him Herb-kun, saying his work is saving lives. Akihiro feels relieved to be appreciated. As the man leaves, Akihiro reflects that he only wants a quiet, peaceful life until someone suddenly calls out to him. A young girl suddenly stops Akihiro and bluntly asks if he is a mage. Surprised, he wonders who she is. Another girl apologizes and explains that Akihiro's mana and magical flow look very clean, which made them think he might be a spellcaster. The girls explain that Akihiro's mana circulation and magical flow look unusually clean, which is why they believed he was a mage. Akihiro quickly denies it with a smile and says he is not a mage. After dismissing the assumption, he turns to leave, but the girls urgently call out for him to wait. Akihiro tries to leave, saying he is only a 10th rank adventurer and probably not useful to them. The girl, Ari, stops him and insists he listen. Her companion apologizes for approaching so suddenly and asks for a moment of his time. After being scolded by her friend, Ari reluctantly apologizes to Akihiro for snapping at him earlier. The girls sincerely ask Akihiro to hear them out. Seeing their desperation, he agrees to listen briefly. They lead him to a meeting room where their companions are waiting. There, a man named Deed greets Akihiro and thanks him for coming. Inside the meeting room, Akihiro introduces himself, while the group begins explaining the situation. Deed reveals that a massive slime has appeared deep in the northern forest. Unlike normal slimes, this one has grown over many years and is now large enough to swallow a person whole. Because of its size, swords are ineffective, and Wadis's fire magic is poorly matched against it. The group explains that the request comes directly from the guild, so they cannot refuse. Currently, they are the only party in the village with 7th rank or higher. They offer Akihiro 70% of the 200,000 Val reward and promise to cover extra expenses and help with rank advancement. Wadis notes that Akihiro has a wind attribute with exceptional control, making him useful for the mission. Akihiro hesitates, saying this task is far beyond what a 10th rank adventurer should handle, and that it brings him little personal benefit. The party explains they plan to leave the next morning. Since the mission is guild designated, a guild auditor will also join them, making 5 people in the group. The slime is deep in the forest, but still within a day's trip. Deed warns that if it is left alone, the giant slime will keep absorbing things, split apart, and multiply, eventually destroying the local ecosystem. Realizing the danger could affect the village and nearby work, Akihiro hesitates but considers helping. Akihiro agrees to help, though he admits he is still a beginner and might slow the group down. The others reassure him they will protect him, relieved that he accepted. As they plan to depart the next day, Akihiro worries that the situation has become more complicated and wonders if he will actually be of any help. Akihiro returns home late, looking exhausted. The man of the house asks about the hunt, and Akihiro explains that after the heavy rain, the forest was difficult to move through, and there wasn't much game to catch. Noticing blood on Akihiro's machete, the man jokes that butchering must have been tiring. Akihiro simply says he will sharpen the blade before dinner and assures him he is fine. During dinner, Akihiro mentions the giant slime mission. The family is surprised, realizing it is a dangerous task, usually rated for 7th rank adventurers, even with guild support. Although slimes are normally harmless, the one deep in the forest is different. Akihiro accepts that monsters are still dangerous, while the girl reacts with disgust, saying huge slimes are gross, despite never having seen one. Akihiro explains that other 7th rank adventurers will be there, so he believes things will be fine and decides to help since his abilities might be useful. Even so, he still feels uneasy. That night, as he lies in bed thinking about the mission, the man of the house simply tells him to be very careful. Lying in bed, Akihiro feels uneasy about going deeper into the dangerous forest to face an unknown giant slime. He reflects on his recent battles, realizing he has already killed 3 goblins, humanoid creatures that carried weapons. The thought unsettles him, knowing that in this world, he could just as easily have been the one killed. Alone with his thoughts, Akihiro admits he is scared. Meeting a god did not grant him an immortal body or overwhelming power. The abilities he received are far from a cheat, and even casting a single spell leaves him feeling sick. Unsure whether the gods are truly on his side, he realizes how fragile his situation in this world really is. Akihiro remembers his old life, ordinary days with friends, family, work, and simple hobbies. Compared to that peaceful world, his current life is full of danger. Lying awake, he admits the truth. He wants to go back. The fear of dying in this world overwhelms him, and he struggles to control the anxiety rising inside him. Lost in his thoughts, Akihiro doesn't notice Lizia entering his room. She calls his name several times before he finally responds. Concerned, she explains that she tried calling him, but he didn't answer, and worried he might not be feeling well. Lizia grabs Akihiro's hand without realizing it, quickly apologizing when she notices. Seeing he is awake reassures her. She explains she was worried because his expression looked darker than usual after returning home. Thinking he might be in pain, she instinctively came to check on him and apologizes for entering his room without permission. Akihiro thanks Lizia, admitting he had been overthinking and feeling gloomy. Talking with her helped clear his mind, and he realizes brooding alone would have kept him from sleeping. Relieved, he assures her it's nothing serious. Lizia smiles and promises to make a delicious dinner while cheering him on for the next day, though she quietly admits she is worried about him. Akihiro realizes that simply having a place to return to and people waiting for him brings him a deep sense of comfort. Feeling calmer, he begins looking forward to tomorrow, joking with Lizia about the meal she will prepare, while she happily tells him to anticipate it. The next morning, The man warns Akihiro that the most troublesome creatures in the forest are wolves, since they hunt in packs. However, wolves are only 8th rank prey, and with several 7th rank adventurers in the party, it should not be a major problem. He advises Akihiro to avoid going too deep into the forest and stay cautious. After finishing breakfast, Akihiro prepares himself and heads out. Before leaving, Lizia anxiously asks Akihiro to be careful and gives him a packed lunch. When he casually calls her Liz, she is surprised and flustered, realizing it is the first time he has used that nickname. Akihiro laughs and suggests she stop calling him Akihiro-san and simply call him Chiro. Lizia becomes flustered trying to say his nickname, but finally calls out Hiro and wishes him a safe trip. Seeing her effort lifts Akihiro's mood, and as he heads out, he realizes that the strange excitement has pushed away his anxiety. Although Akihiro is still afraid, he chooses to face the mission. Encouraged, he decides to stay in this world for now and challenge the giant slime. As he heads out with renewed determination, a notification appears. Bravery 1 has been added and integrated into his acquisition skill. Shortly after, Deed greets him, ready to begin the mission. With everyone gathered, the party prepares to depart. A guild member named Hardis introduces himself as the auditor who will accompany them on the mission. After brief greetings, the group sets out together toward their destination, the northern forest, where the giant slime awaits. As the group advances into the northern forest, Deed warns that the number of monsters increases from that point onward. He tells everyone to stay alert as they continue moving deeper into the forest. While moving through the forest, Akihiro asks if the giant slime is still in the same place. Hardis explains that once slimes grow large, they rarely move. To navigate, Akihiro checks a map and compass, surprising the others. Deed finds the item impressive since he usually determines direction using the sun and time instead. As the party moves through the forest, 2 goblins suddenly jump out to attack. Akihiro alerts the group, but Deed reacts instantly, drawing his sword and cutting down the goblins in a single swift strike before they can reach them. Akihiro is impressed by Deed's speed, recognizing the skill expected of a 7th rank adventurer. After quickly collecting the subjugation proof, the group continues deeper into the forest. As they move forward, Deed notices the mana density growing stronger, and the forest around them becomes darker and more ominous. The group suddenly finds themselves surrounded by a pack of wolves. Hardis quickly realizes they are encircled and warns the others. Deed orders everyone to hold the wolves back, while Wattis prepares a spell. As the wolves close in, the party forms a defensive line to protect the mage, while she begins chanting. Wattis finishes her chant and releases her magic. Instantly, the wolves collapse one after another, shocking Akihiro with how quickly the threat is eliminated. When asked about the spell, Wattis calmly explains that she cannot cast large-scale magic. Instead, she compressed small fireballs and sent them directly into the wolves' mouths, burning their lungs from the inside. Wattis calmly defeats the wolves without damaging their bodies, leaving the materials intact. Despite her gentle appearance, her methods are extremely ruthless. Deed explains that wolf pelts can be sold, so they will collect them on the way back. After regrouping, the party continues deeper into the forest, expecting about 2 more hours before reaching their destination. Hardis reassures Akihiro, saying it is normal to be nervous since the mission is above his rank, and he has only recently become an adventurer. He thanks him for agreeing to help despite that. Akihiro worries he may not be very useful, but Hardis remains supportive. Meanwhile, Akihiro quietly notes how ordinary Hardis seems so ordinary that his face is strangely hard to remember. Hardis notes that balanced parties like theirs are rare, making this group reliable both offensively and defensively. Deed adds that the 3 of them have been childhood friends in the village. Hearing this, Akihiro is shocked and jokingly jealous, thinking Deed must have had incredible luck to grow up with 2 beautiful childhood friends. Hardis swiftly cuts down another monster, displaying efficient swordsmanship that impresses Akihiro. Realizing Hardis is a guild officer, Akihiro admires his skill. With the path clear, Hardis tells the group to push forward toward their objective. Determined, Akihiro resolves to help however he can, since they have already come this far. The group finally reaches the target and discovers the huge slime. Its massive size shocks Akihiro, far larger than he expected. Hardis confirms that the location matches the report, meaning this enormous slime is their objective. The party confronts the enormous slime, which stands about 3 meters tall. Akihiro is stunned by its size. Hardis explains that the slime's weak point is the core inside its body. If they destroy the core or remove enough of the surrounding slime mass, the monster's activity will stop. Akihiro asks Deed to throw a stone at the slime to observe how it reacts. When the stone hits, the slime slowly shifts toward the impact point. After a moment, it sluggishly returns to its original position, confirming that the monster reacts to disturbances but moves very slowly. Hardis explains they only need the slime's core, so the outer jelly isn't necessary. However, they should avoid destroying more than needed, since some materials can still be recovered. Akihiro decides to try blowing apart the outer slime, first using moderate power, though he worries such a large target might exhaust him. The others encourage him as he prepares to attempt it. Akihiro steps forward to attack the huge slime, but the pressure makes his hands tremble. Feeling embarrassed by his nervousness, he tries to steady himself. Realizing everyone has protected him so he could act at this moment, he gathers his resolve and decides he must go through with it. Akihiro carefully visualizes his spell. He compresses a sphere of wind to about 10 centimeters in front of his finger, adds rotational force, and shapes it into a narrow cone of pressure. Calculating the output, he launches the attack at roughly 700 kilometers per hour, about half the speed of a handgun bullet. Akihiro carefully aims slightly to the right of the slime's core and releases the spell. The compressed wind projectile shoots forward at high speed. It pierces into the slime's body and explodes inside, violently blasting the jelly-like mass apart. Akihiro's attack blasts apart the slime's outer body, scattering the jelly across the ground. However, the core remains intact. Even so, the slime stops moving, meaning its activity has ceased. The others praise Akihiro for defeating it on his first try. After confirming the slime is defeated, Akihiro celebrates briefly, relieved that his attack worked. However, the strain from using the spell hits him immediately, causing intense nausea and a terrible headache. As he struggles, Wada supports him while thanking him for going that far for the team. Recovering from the recoil of his spell, Akihiro wonders if the severe nausea was caused by the compression and speed of the wind attack. He decides he will need to properly test and adjust it next time. Meanwhile, the others gather around the remains of the huge slime and its core. Hardis remarks that monsters of this size are rare, while Deed notes that the effort was worth it. Hardis promises to consider Akihiro for future requests and reminds him to keep his promise to help again. After the battle, the group checks the slime's core while asking if Akihiro is feeling better. He apologizes for worrying them and admits the backlash from the spell was the worst he has experienced. The others, however, are impressed. They did not expect him to possess such power, and they praise him for defeating such a large monster in a single attack. While the group praises Akihiro, he modestly says he only learned magic recently and understands his limits. Suddenly, Eri senses something approaching. Hardis reacts in alarm, and she warns the others that something huge is moving toward them, though she cannot yet identify what it is. The group senses a powerful presence rapidly approaching. Hardis immediately orders everyone to withdraw. Realizing they may have underestimated the danger, Deed quickly organizes the retreat. Hardis takes the lead while the others run, with Deed and Eri staying behind to guard the rear. Wada secures the slime's core as they escape. As the group retreats, a deep howl echoes through the forest. Hardis realizes the sound is far too deep to belong to a normal wolf. Eri warns that whatever is coming is closing in quickly, urging everyone to move faster before it reaches them. As they run through the forest, the group realizes the threat behind them is not a single monster, but a large pack of wolves, more than 10, and clearly stronger than normal ones. Struggling to keep up, Akihiro pants heavily and realizes he is slowing everyone down, feeling frustrated that he is holding the party back. Realizing he cannot outrun the wolves, Akihiro suggests climbing a tree and using magic to hold them off. He explains that if he can rest between casts, he might be able to keep attacking continuously. Deed worries about whether it is truly safe since they do not know how many wolves there are, but Eri believes Akihiro's magic could work. With no time to hesitate, Hardis agrees to the plan, noting that wolves normally have limits to their pack size. The group quickly climbs a large tree to escape the approaching wolves. Catching his breath, Akihiro complains about his weak stamina and vows to start jogging and training more when he gets back. Just as they settle into position, Eri warns that the wolves have already arrived beneath them. Moments later, the wolves gather beneath the tree. Their shadows spread across the ground as the pack surrounds the area. The group realizes these are not normal wolves. Each one is enormous and far more intimidating than expected, confirming the danger chasing them. From the tree, the group sees the wolves clearly and is shocked by their size, each one about 3 times larger than a normal wolf. Using a recognition skill, Akihiro realizes these wolves have adapted to areas with dense magical energy and turned into monsters. Their hides are much tougher than those of ordinary wolves. From the tree, the group realizes the situation is worse than expected. The wolves continue howling to call more of their pack, and there are already nearly 20 gathered below. Seeing the danger growing, Hardis turns to Wattis. She calmly prepares her magic and begins the spell. Wattis jumps from the tree and attacks the wolves with fire magic. However, the monsters only suffer minor burn damage and keep fighting. Hardis realizes the problem. Unlike before, she cannot force the wolves to open their mouths, so she cannot burn their lungs from the inside. Without Deed and Eri restraining them, her magic is far less effective. Seeing that the wolves cannot climb the tree, Akihiro decides to attack from above. He prepares another wind spell, compressing a small ball of air in front of his finger and shaping the pressure. Calculating the speed so the wolves cannot dodge, he aims at one of them and releases the attack. Akihiro's wind shot hits perfectly, blowing apart one of the wolves. Relieved, he realizes his attack worked. But Hardis quickly notices a bigger problem. The pack is still growing. More wolves gather beneath the tree, surrounding them as their numbers continue to increase. Hardis warns that if they do not reduce the wolves' numbers quickly, even more packs may be drawn by the noise. He asks Akihiro how quickly he can repeat the powerful spell he used earlier. Realizing they cannot defeat the wolves one at a time, Akihiro understands he must try something new. To strike many at once, he concludes he will need to attempt a multi-cast spell. As Akihiro prepares to attempt a multi-cast spell, he remembers a warning from his instructor. Excessive spellcasting can cause serious harm or dangerous side effects. Despite the risk, he realizes there is no other choice. Accepting the danger, he decides to rely on a desperate prayer and push forward with the spell. As Akihiro prepares to push his magic further, a voice suddenly connects with him. It introduces itself as Alecta, the entity that governs spellcasting. When Akihiro urgently asks about the dangers of excessive magic use, Alecta explains that the nausea he felt earlier is only the first symptom, his brain becoming intoxicated from magical strain. If he continues to overuse magic beyond that point, it could lead to severe damage, including a cerebral hemorrhage. Alecta tells Akihiro that their visitor is struggling, so she will temporarily assist in controlling the spell. However, she warns that once it is over, he will likely lose consciousness for several days. Grateful, Akihiro accepts and prepares to attempt the multicasting technique. Looking below, he notices nearly 30 wolves gathered, realizing they are facing the entire pack. Akihiro tells Hardis he will handle the situation, but warns that he will likely collapse afterward. Determined, he prepares to give everything he has. Using Alecta's assistance, he visualizes a targeting reticle on each wolf and begins locking onto them one by one. Counting carefully, he identifies 34 wolves in total and prepares to strike them all at once. With Alecta's help stabilizing the spell, Akihiro prepares a massive multicast attack. He creates 34 compressed wind shots, each shaped into a small cone of pressure and set to fire at about 150 kilometers per hour. Each projectile is individually locked onto a different wolf. Thinking of the people waiting for him to return home, he gathers his resolve and releases the spell, executing all the attacks at once. Akihiro unleashes the multicast spell, firing dozens of compressed wind shots at once. Each projectile strikes a different wolf, exploding through their bodies simultaneously and wiping out the entire pack in an instant. From the tree, the others watch in shock as the wolves collapse across the forest floor. None of them move anymore. Exhausted but relieved, Akihiro realizes the threat is gone and believes he can finally return home. After defeating the wolves, Akihiro's strength finally gives out. His consciousness begins fading as the strain from the massive spell catches up to him. As he loses awareness, he apologizes to Hardis, while the mysterious figure who governs magic calmly watches from afar. Akihiro regains awareness in a strange space and meets a mysterious man named Alecta. The man explains that it is their first meeting and welcomes him as a visitor. Akihiro thanks him for helping earlier and becomes confused about where he is. Alecta calmly explains that the place is related to the system that governs spellcasting. Akihiro also notices Alecta's unusual clothing, which resembles formal attire from his own world, suggesting the mysterious figure possesses deep knowledge about him and his origins. Electa explains that he created this space to talk with Akihiro while his body remains unconscious. Since Akihiro will be in a coma for some time after the intense spellcasting, they have time for a conversation. Akihiro is confused about what someone like him could discuss with a god. Electa reveals that beings who manage magic observe different worlds, and Earth is one of the most popular. According to him, Earth attracts attention because of its fascinating perspectives and ideas. Electa explains that every world is created with a specific theme. Earth's theme is the development of civilization, while this world's theme is allowing people to live as happily as possible. He reveals that the planet is essentially a copy of Earth, including its genetics, which is why the inhabitants resemble humans. However, the gods adjusted the system to reduce wars among the same species. The result is a world inspired by Earth, but designed to pursue happiness rather than conflict. Electa continues, explaining that many beings who manage different worlds are fascinated by Earth, especially Japanese culture such as games, anime, and manga. Even he enjoys things from Earth, and admits he particularly likes potato chips, often copying new flavors to try them. Akihiro realizes that otaku culture is popular even beyond Earth. Electa then asks him to help introduce potato chips to this world, since the locals believe potatoes are poisonous after getting sick from the leaves. Akihiro reluctantly agrees to help spread them when he returns. Electa tells Akihiro that it is time for him to return. Although time flows differently in that space, Akihiro will soon wake up in the real world. After thanking Electa for the help and conversation, Akihiro says goodbye. As his consciousness fades from the strange realm, he wonders what will happen when he wakes up and whether he is safely returned to his companions.